Hey guys, it's Mike here from Wrighta Bonsai in Southwest Florida. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I tried to do a live stream. Thank anybody who tried to tune in for that, but we had some issues. So we're going to continue here with the YouTube video version. So thanks everybody for your patience, and hopefully you guys we can get back on track here. So I'm going to reiterate some of the things I talked about briefly in the Facebook Live video, pretty much just start over. Today's subject is water jasmine, also known as Wrighta religiosa. It's a tree that's very commonly used for bonsai in countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, Indonesia, and also now here in Florida and other tropical countries. It's used quite prevalently. It has many good characteristics to use for bonsai. It branches and ramifies very, very easily. It's a very good healer as far as healing big wounds. It can develop fantastic nabari, but the primary reason people grow these trees is obviously for the blooms. Now, it is interesting to note, even though it's called a water jasmine, it is not a true jasmine. It is not of the family of Triacleospernum, which is the true jasmine family. It is just a common name. So this is of the Wrighta family. The reason it is called a jasmine is obviously because of the fragrant flowers that do smell like typical jasmine plants. So it is very aromatic. It will fill the room with lovely fragrance, and that's one of the uses that people will grow for. The other is the aesthetics of the flowers. So water jasmine or Wrighta are unique in that they have pendulous flowers. So the flowers actually hang down from the branch and open upside down. So this is used to great effect for bonsai aesthetic, especially for some of the more traditional forms. Like you can see this guy, this is a tree that's in development in the nursery. And so you can kind of see how we've structured these pads, and you'll see you'll have green up top, and then once this is full, you'll have a green top and a white bottom with those pendulous flowers. So as we layer the design out and work our way up, eventually this will be all white here, green, white, green, white, green, and we'll have layers to it. So it can create a very beautiful, very unique aesthetic because of that layering. Now you don't have to style jasmine in that traditional kind of upright form with pads. Eric has a tree here from his collection. This is just a standard water jasmine. You can see this one was grown a little differently. This one was I believe a landscape tree, or at least grown for landscape purposes originally. And so there were some quote-unquote flaws in the original trunk line for use with bonsai. But good artists in this art take material that might not be the best and work with it and make something beautiful. So even though this trunk may have had some design difficulties when first kind of undertaking it, Eric has made some very intelligent choices on how to cut these large trunks. He's V-cut some of them and positioned branches on two ends of the wounds, and so doubling up on healing. He's started to bring up multiple trunks and allow those to thicken, and so he's taking this in more of kind of an upright sympodial form and utilizing kind of that thick, clumped together trunk lines that normally we would shy away from in bonsai. So, and again, you can see here, Eric is also running some sacrifice branches. He may be trying to grow another trunk. I'm not sure what his thought process is for this. He may also just be trying to thicken this side of the nabari. But I would assume he's trying to grow it to add another trunk to the design, just kind of break up that symmetry that you see in here. So this is a standard water jasmine. This is just a regular Wrighta religiosa. So there are several varieties of this plant used in bonsai. This is the most common, the standard, but there is also a double flower, which has a different flower. We'll talk about that in a second. An intermediate leafed variety, and also a dwarf called Wrighta vietnamensis. So I'll show you guys the double flower real quick. Okay. So this is a double flower I've been growing for about 10 years or so. I originally got this tree off of Eric from his collection. So he did the primary structure and formed that, and I've been kind of caring for it since. Now this tree was just drastically cut back this year, about last month. I cut it back really, really hard, repotted it, and so it is pushing a lot of big leaves that should kind of regulate as I work the tree throughout the year. I should get less and less of those big leaves as the vigor starts to slow down. But this is the double flower variety. Now, I don't have any flowers open to show you guys what the look is, but basically it's similar to the traditional flower here, but it's kind of layered with two of these kind of rosettes. So it's like if you were to combine two of them together, you'd see them stacked like that. And that's kind of why they call it the double flower, is it's almost like two sets of petals stacked one on top of the other. So other than that, there's no huge differences. I personally have maybe noticed that this one's a little slower, a little less vigorous than the standard, but there may be some growers out there that would argue against that. These are a little more rare, or actually quite a bit more rare than the standard. So this is the species I tend to, or not species, the variety I tend to gravitate towards when looking for water jasmines. So that's two of them there, the double flower there. Okay, set head down. Now we also have what we call an intermediate here. Now this is the intermediate leaf. You can see it's much, much smaller than the standard leaf. I'll pull a normal standard leaf off, and you guys can see the difference in leaf size. Okay, so this is considered the intermediate cultivar. So it's not even the smallest that they come, and you can see that these are very, very small leaves as is. Now these have just pushed out, so these leaves may get a little bigger, but you can see they're quite consistently small. And also the flower is a lot smaller than the standard flower as well. So I'll pull that flower off and show you that even the size of the flowers is different. We have a true kind of dwarfing to this flower. So now there is one size smaller than this called Wrighta vietnamensis. We do not have any currently in the nursery, but it does have both a flower and a leaf size that is even smaller than the intermediate. Now, me personally, I have noticed that this dwarfing doesn't come without cons. These trees, at least the vietnamensis, is a lot more fickle than the traditional water jasmine and tends to grow a lot slower. So not quite as vigorous and maybe a little touchier. So there are trade-offs to having that small foliage and those really, really small flowers. Both are great species to use for bonsai. If you're a beginner and you don't have a ton of experience, you may want to kind of learn on a regular one first before kind of jumping into the deep end and taking on one of the more fickle varieties. Excuse me. So water jasmine can be used in a variety of ways, tons of different styles. They can be used to make small trees. The leaves reduce readily. Pardon me. So even on a standard water jasmine, I'll show you here, we've got Eric's tree, and you can see this is kind of the standard leaf size of a water jasmine here, and you can see that he's quite consistently got his leaf size worked down to a very maintainable small size. Okay, now he's done that, I assume, just by following most dwarfing practices such as half cutting leaves, maintaining good pruning regimen, not letting things run too long, fertilizing appropriately, and repotting at appropriate intervals. He repots once a year. Some people do repot twice, but just keep in mind that repotting and keeping them a little bit root bound does help with kind of creating smaller roots, so don't repot too often. So they can be used for shohin. Now this is one that I've been growing. This is about 2 years in development. The branching on it is just started this year. So the 2 years I spent just kind of creating the trunk. I grew it as exposed root style, so that took about 1 year, and then about 1 year growing a couple of beefy structural branches. And then this year I've just started, within the last month, I just repotted it and got these branches and are wiring out these. So this is still very early in the development. But will make a very nice shohin, especially with these kind of layered flowers hanging down in the design once we have this full and robust. So that'll look really, really cool. So they can be used for all size bonsai, all the way down to shohin, very convincingly. So water jasmine does have some kind of Achilles heels, if I can say that. They tend to, one of the biggest issues is they tend to get chlorosis very, very easily. Chlorosis is just kind of a fancy name for bleaching out or more often than not overwatering. So what you'll notice on water jasmines, especially as we get into kind of the more dormant times of year, fall, winter, you'll notice that they go very, very yellow and they tend to stay wet very easily. So when we get into the more dormant times of the year, it's very, very important to exercise good watering. So they're going to require a lot less water than they do when they're growing very vigorously. Even this tree that you can see, still very, very healthy, but you can see from just sitting under the irrigation after winter, you know, they usually go very, very, they drop a lot of leaves in winter. And so when they come back and they're sitting under the irrigation, they can tend to stay a little too wet while they're kind of growing out. And you can see just in the month or two that they've been sitting under there, they've developed a little bit of chlorosis that they'll push past, but it's interesting to just note that they do tend to get overwatered pretty easily. So just keep note of the foliage. If you start to see that it's taking on that veining look, then that's your first sign to pull back on the watering, okay? The only other thing that can really cause chlorosis is fertilizing issues. So your tree might be telling you need more food. So as long as you feed it regularly and you watch your watering, you should be able to avoid the chlorosis. As I maybe mentioned before, these are very, very hardy trees. They can be pruned very, very hard, pruned all the way back to a trunk line, hard root cutting, and they will respond very vigorously. I don't typically have issues doing any of that work. So very, very hardy tree, very, very good for beginners, okay? So here we have a kind of a demonstration tree. I just want to work through this tree quickly, kind of show you guys the workflow, and maybe talk to you guys a little bit about the design process. So I did already start to defoliate this in the Facebook Live video, but as we said before, we had some technical difficulties, so I kind of stopped and decided I was going to pick up here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just defoliate the tree. Now, you guys are going to see me do this a little more haphazardly than normal. In bonsai, there's kind of, how do I word this? You can be more aggressive early on in the tree's life, and such as stripping leaves off. At this stage, I'm not worried about fine ramification. I'm looking to do my coarse styling or my structural styling. So I'm just trying to get the leaves off the tree as fast as possible. Now, I wouldn't use this technique of stripping leaves on a tree that's well refined, or a tree that maybe I have plans for the branches and maybe I need to be a little more deliberate, a little more careful in what I'm doing. If it's a tree like that, it's better to use scissors and do it properly. But for now, you can see I'm just quickly going through stripping the leaves. branch that was here. Okay, I took off a large branch, I believe it was this one. Now the reason being, you're probably wondering why I took off the large branch and not the little branch. The large branch is actually less useful to us than this branch over here. We would have just had two branches, one-sided here. And so we already have a large branch here that we're going to use. And so we can't have these two branches growing right across. And so it's better to put one on the other side, remove the large one, and just heal the wound. Okay, so you can see I dealt with it in that way. There's a few more that I'm going to have to deal with. This one, I'm still deciding whether I need him, but he's probably coming off as well. And then I'm going to work my way to the top and do the same sort of thing. I'm looking to cut back for taper. So for those who are wondering why I cut that big branch back, if I put it back on, you can see that we have a long section with no taper and no division. So a little bit back here, but really this just goes the same taper ratio all the way to this branch. And so it's better to kind of cut it back to something that will taper a little better and start the design with a better structure, okay, if that makes sense. All right, guys, so we got the tree styled. As always, there were some challenges to the styling. Not everything always comes out as perfectly as we draw down as diagrams. But as you can see, I did form my structure, starting alternating left, back, right, and so on up the tree. I did try to take care of most of the bar branches. Now, as we get to the top, you can see there are still some bars here and here that will need to be dealt with, probably on the next flush of growth. But just so you guys could see kind of a full structure, I left that intact. So as this tree grows, we'll probably further refine this design, maybe take care of some of these straight sections as these get more robust, and continue to divide the tree. Due to the long, straighter trunk, we do tend to want to keep our branches a little straighter. So I did put a little bit of undulation in these branches, but nothing insane, no big sweeping, curling branches, anything like that. Because we do want to match the same environment that shaped this trunk, we want to also shape the branches. All right, so I would plant this as a slant. The Nabari does allow for it. I did check kind of the direction that it was growing, the angle that it was growing. I think the slant opens up a little more movement and brings this apex back into line with the Nabari. If we leave it flat, you can see that we kind of have the apex going against the line of movement. So we just want to reposition it so that we're continuing that line. This is a good time to repot these trees. This is probably, in my opinion, the best time to repot water jasmine. If you don't get it done in spring, you have all summer to do it. You can do it up to October. October's, keep in mind, probably really late and could be a little risky. So personally, I'd wrap up repotting on tropicals around August. We do late repottings here in Florida, but that does always have risk. So this is kind of the design that we're finishing up with today. You see we did take care of that large stub up in the middle. We did kind of a V cut, and we're hoping that each branch on the two sides of the cut will heal kind of equally on both sides and start to close that wound at a faster rate. We do V cut it to kind of increase the taper to the design, so it's not just a flat cut across and creating a T branch. So that should shape up just fine. The last thing I just want to touch on is, again, showing kind of wound treatment. So you see, especially on a good healer like Wrighta, we want to make concave cuts going inwards to the tree, not convex cuts. And so as that heals and fills with scar tissue, we're hoping that that finishes up healing right around flush, okay, so that we don't have a big knob or swelling. So that's the end of our styling for water jasmine today. Again, this is hardy material. We have various different sizes available for you guys, from pre-bonsai all the way up to larger specimen type pre-bonsai. So if you have some time and you want to get out of the house, feel free to stop by and check out some of our water jasmine. We are practicing social distancing, so feel free to get out of the house and come check it out if you'd like. Other than that, just visit us on our website, follow us on Facebook, and the last thing I want to touch on is I will be doing online classes this weekend on Saturday. So if you guys want to sign up for that, just contact the nursery. It's $25 for a half hour. So stay safe out there, guys, and have a great day.